Babcock & Brown has finally been put out of its misery, with the company calling the administrators on Friday. And I'm joined in the studio today by Stephen Mayne from the Mayne Report. The B&B news today that really, I guess, just finishes a whole era, but it sort of finishes a kind of like a long illness that we've seen B&B go through really for the last year. Can you explain what actually happened today?
Well, it's appropriate. It's Friday the 13th.
I hadn't actually thought of that.
It's all over for the financial engineers. The total losses on paper will exceed $10 billion, I think, when you look right across the whole Babcock empire, including their listed funds. What happened today was at 7 o'clock Australian time, there was a meeting of unsecured note holders in New Zealand. They voted down the proposal to receive a ridiculously small 0.1 cent in the dollar payback. So unsecured note holders were owed $600 million. And they offered them 0.1 cents, or $6,000, and it was an insult. And I'm a note holder, and the Kiwis voted it down. The Australians actually voted in favour, but because the Kiwis voted it down after a 2-hour meeting and a poll, they called in the receivers, and Deloitte is now running Babcock & Brown. OK,
so you've got a personal interest in this. You paid how much for that note?
Well, I bought 5 notes, I think, for $100 each. I sold 4 of them. I was left with 1. So it was a $100 note, face value, and they were offering me 0.1 cent.
Which means 0.1 of 1 cent.
That's right. So I was going to vote against at the meeting at 4:30 in Sydney this afternoon, but because they've appointed the receivers, they've cancelled the meeting, and so the board is no more. And I guess now you've got $9 billion of debt across the empire, $3.2 billion of corporate debt, and another $6 billion of project debt, and they've just got to sell off this in a fire sale.
All right, so what is the difference, though, between, and because B&B are saying that there is a different structure, that the international operations are separate from this, can you just explain that?
Babcock & Brown is just a bit of a shell, and its main asset is it owns 99.7% of Babcock & Brown International, which owns all of the management agreements and all of the infrastructure and property assets. So the receivers won't actually do much. They've only got control of Babcock & Brown Limited, which has $600 million.
Is really a shell,
yeah,
and has these notes.
$600 million owing to the note holders, a couple of dividend checks that haven't been picked, not much at all, and one major asset, which is 99.7% of Babcock & Brown International, where all the action is and where the asset sale program will continue, with the executives still doing it.
All right. Now, will that have to be continued asset sales? Is that the only route for them?
Well, there's $9 billion of debt outstanding. It's a credit crisis. There's 25
they can't
banks.
Pay that debt back.
That's right. So it's a fire sale, and I think that the $3.2 billion owed by the corporate debt will probably take quite a haircut, and all the big 4 Australian banks are in there, and 25 banks across the world. And then what really is unknown is how much of the $6 billion in project debt on real estate plays, in particular infrastructure, will be written down, because they just can't realise decent values for after the fire sale. The key thing of the Babcock and Macquarie model, which I think won't ever return, you'll always have a fund manager getting paid a fee to manage an asset, but you won't have that fund manager also being the investment banker and the deal maker, being paid 50 million success fees and 30 million debt arrangement fees. So you can be a fund manager, but you can't also be the advisor, because you've got a conflict, and the conflict is buy up assets and get fees, and then literally more than $10 billion has been lost from that model. Investors won't tolerate that again.